What is up, Internet? This is Derek Dustuff, and welcome to part 1 of my 7-part series where I'm going to rate and review every single Marvel project since Blade. So that's every movie and every Disney Plus project. We're skipping some stuff, like the Defenders shows and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Maybe we'll come back to those in the future, but this is just the main Marvel movies and also the Disney Plus shows. And I rated them based on 5 criteria: the story, characters, spectacle, pace, and of course, entertainment, because that's what we're here for. So without further ado, let's get into it. At number 69.
Nice.
We have Morbius with 41%. My god, this movie is bland. Matt Smith and the police officer were the only ones who seemed to be enjoying themselves in this movie. Everyone else in this movie just felt flat and boring, especially Jared Leto. This would have scored worse, but the pacing was quick enough to where I wasn't too bored, I guess, and was able to get to the end. And there were a handful of times there was actually some really cool visuals. Everything else about this movie sucked though. Like, it was just boring, stupid, and also I still don't understand the whole thing with the Vulture. I feel like Sony is really trying to force a Sinister Six situation, which they basically did a Sinister Six in No Way Home, so I don't understand why they're trying to do this. It's been done already, but they just need to focus on trying to make a good movie rather than force a universe. And here they did not do that. At number 68, we have Punisher Warzone with a score of 46%. This movie could have potentially scored way lower, but it did have a handful of decent action pieces. Every character was flat or over the top with no in between whatsoever. The emotional moments felt just weird and awkward. Frank looked like the mobster villain rather than an anti-hero seeking vengeance. This movie was just really hard to watch, and honestly I nearly turned it off. Just pretend this movie doesn't exist at all and just watch the Defenders series with that version of the Punisher. It has everything you want from a Punisher adaptation, so definitely go for that instead. At number 67, we have Electro with 60%. This movie was another case of the fighting being the only thing that saved it from having a lower score. There's not really much to say about this movie in general. It was by no means groundbreaking. It was fun to watch at some parts, but in general, it was dry and had a very generic story. Definitely not something I would recommend. At number 66, we have Daredevil with 62%. This movie started off pretty hot, but there was a lot of inconsistency. I get Daredevil has super senses, but he's still just a person at the end of the day. He can't make the jumps and all that stuff that he does, and some of the character and story development kind of suffered with it. There's no way he can jump off buildings that high up and just casually just land on his feet. Especially that scene where he jumps off the top of a skyscraper and lands on one of the window cleaning scaffoldings or whatever. He should not be able to survive that. He would have broken legs, fall down, die. That simple. So it was just too much that took you out of the movie in a way. The action and the Bullseye character were kind of helpful with some of the spectacle factor, but that was the only thing that saved this from a worse score. At number 65, we have Spider-Man 3 with 65%. Sony has a really bad habit of trying to make things go too big too quickly. I think if Sam Raimi had made this film what he wanted it to be, this could have had a beautiful ending and maybe even kept some of the story going. We could have had Spider-Man 4 or whatever. But behind the scenes decisions were made and they try to use some bigger characters rather than focus on making a good story. Look, everyone loves Venom, but you can't force a character to be in a movie just because you think it'll mean money. Because if you don't have a good story to go with it, then it falls flat and you lose some of that recognition and want for that character. At number 64, we have X-Men Dark Phoenix with 66%. This movie had a lot of ingredients that could have made a really good movie. The story was very meh, and the characters were lackluster and uninteresting, and honestly the whole movie just felt very blah. This felt phoned in by most of the cast, and also at the end of Futures Past, Jean was alive. So this movie makes no sense existing whatsoever. And no one has aged at all despite this technically being 30 plus years since First Class took place. The only good part of this movie was the train fight sequence. I thought that was really well done and really cool. But other than that, this movie was lackluster and it just kind of went through the motions of an X-Men movie. At number 63, we have Blade 2 with 67%. The thing that stuck out most for this movie for me was baby Norman Reedus. He had energy, but he still had that like grease monkey vibe he's known for. The movie still had a lot of the style from the first movie, but in general the plot just didn't feel quite as good and well done as the first movie. It definitely could have been a lot better, and it could have done a lot more, especially with some of the heavy hitters they had as far as actors go. At number 62, we have The Punisher with 67%. Going into this movie, I'd never seen either of the Punisher movies. This first one was actually fairly solid. He looked pretty much like a good military dad who just wanted to be a family man. Then of course, people went and killed his family, then he went all John Wick on them. I enjoyed the movie, and I just wish Warzone would have continued this movie rather than kind of be a soft reboot. Because this movie had a lot of potential. It could have gone bigger, better, had better action sequences, but at the end of the day, this Punisher was definitely way better than Punisher Warzone, but still nowhere close to as good as the Defenders Punisher. At number 61, we have the 2003 Hulk movie at 68%. This movie seemed to have two distinct goals: take the comic book look literally, and to make this a character drama piece. It worked in some areas and failed in others. I don't hate this movie by any means, but it definitely could have had improvements, especially with the final villain. His abilities were just very confusing and weird visually, and they could have done a lot better.